For this example, we're asked to find the domain of a radical function. We have f of x is equal to 3 times the quantity x plus 5 plus 7 times the quantity x minus 1. Now, whenever we have an even-indexed radical, such as a square root, we need to make sure that whatever we choose under the radical is greater than or equal to 0 so that it produces a real number. So first of all, we just need to look at our first radical, and then we'll look at the second one, and I'm going to use a number line to help us come up with our answer. So we want to make sure when we have an even-indexed radical, such as a square root, that we have what's underneath the radical greater than or equal to 0. 0 is fine, it just needs to be greater than or equal to 0. So in this case, x needs to be greater than or equal to negative 5. Let's look at our second radical and do the same thing. We need to make sure that x minus 1 is greater than or equal to 0. So in this case, x has to be greater than or equal to 1. Now, let's use a number line to help us. Okay, we have for our first piece of information, x has to be greater than or equal to negative 5. So on the number line, it would look like this. I should add a 1 right here. And the other piece of information we have is that x needs to be greater than or equal to 1, which really looks like this. So, how do we write the domain for this function f of x? Well, we need to choose the values that are common to both domains. So it's really going to be the intersection of these two domains. In other words, I can't choose a number to the left of 1 on the number line. For example, what if I wanted to include 0 in my domain for this entire function? If I substitute 0 in for x, in the second radical, I'd get 0 minus 1. I would have a negative number underneath the radical, and that's not a real number. So I need to restrict my domain to the intersection of these two. So I really need to start from 1, and I can say that my domain is such that set of all x, such that x is greater than or equal to 1, or I could write it in interval notation from 1 to infinity.